Hello, hello, hello. Good to see everybody. I think it feels like I just saw you not that long ago. Yes, it seems like I just saw you not that long ago. Welcome to St. Bernard's Books with Mrs. Brickson. I'm Laura Brickson and the principal of St. Bernard's School here in Thief River Falls, Minnesota. And today is April 20th, 2020. This is our 22nd, I think, 22nd time, that 22nd day that we've done this. But it's a little story time. And we have, it was great because I got to see some of you, get to talk to some of you this morning. I know Mrs. Zare did a St. Bernard's morning meeting, and I kind of helped out a teeny bit, and I just provided some music. So we're going to hopefully do that maybe once a week or so. So I have to talk to Mrs. Zare. But it was just lots of fun. If you could please do me a favor, please write down in the comments, uh, you know, please write in the comments that you're here or whatever the case may be, because otherwise it's like I can't tell on my end. Um, so there, I just sent you guys a message. But today, let us begin because we have a whole new book. Woo-hoo! We have a whole new book, but let's get going. Here we go. Difference, we can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. Go make a difference. We can make a difference. Go make a difference in the world. Awesome. Woo, trying to turn this off now. Anyway, it's good to see all of you guys. And our joke for today is, what time did the man go to the dentist? What time did the man go to the dentist? Tooth hurty. Tooth hurty. Get it? 2:30? 2:30? 2:30? Thank you. Time did the man go to the dentist? Tooth hurty. And so we are going to be starting Judy Blume's Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. We did finish up Holes on Friday, and it took a long time. It was a thick book. I think it was definitely a wonderful, wonderful book, and I know our older kids appreciated it. But this one is going to be definitely fun for all ages. And again, if you end up missing it, if you ever want to come back and you want to see this, take a look at our link. Make sure you find it, bookmark it, or whatever the case may be, so you don't miss anything. Anyways, with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Judy Blume. Now, Judy Blume, I love. Growing up, she was just like everyone's favorite author. Everyone absolutely adored her. One of my all-time favorite books that I would read with my fourth graders, Dear Mr. Henshaw, is a real thoughtful book, a real thought-provoking book. And that was actually a Newbery book. But I thought this one is going to be a little lighter. It's going to be a little more fun. And I'll read you what it says in the back. And I'm not sure why it's kind of flicking, but hey, it's kind of says in the back, this fudge isn't so sweet. Two is a crowd when Peter and his little brother, Fudge, that's his nickname, are in the same room. Grown-ups think Fudge is absolutely adorable, but Peter and his pet turtle, Dribble, know the truth. From throwing temper tantrums to smearing mashed potatoes on the wall, Fudge causes mischief wherever he goes. So here's the deal. This is what I want to know. Those of you who have brothers or sisters who are home, do you ever maybe get in an argument with your little brother or older brother or sister? Maybe a little bit. Now be honest. Is everyone always getting along? I know that I have a little brother, David, who's 5 years younger than I am. And oh my goodness, we would fight and roll around on the floor. And then 5 minutes later, we'd be playing Monopoly together. And he is surely one of my best friends. So, the key thing is, you got to be nice to your brothers and sisters, whether they're older or younger. And, it does get better as you get older. They're less annoying. But the key thing is always be nice and always have your brothers or sisters back. Okay? There's our little lesson for today on that. Don't forget, say hi in the comments. Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume. Chapter 1. And if you happen to be following along, if you happen to have this, Chapter 1, page 3. The Big Winner. I won dribble at Jimmy Fargo's birthday party. All the other guys got to take home goldfish in little plastic bags. I won him because I guessed that there were 348 jelly beans in Mrs. Fargo's jar. Really, there were 423, she told us later. Still, my guess was the closest. Peter Warren Hatcher is the big winner, said Mrs. Fargo announced. At first, I felt bad that I didn't win a goldfish, too. And then Jimmy handed me a glass bowl. Inside, there was some water and 3 rocks. A tiny green turtle was sleeping on the biggest rock. All the other guys looked at the goldfish. I knew what they were thinking. They wished that they could have tiny green turtles, too. I named my turtle Dribble while I was walking home from Jimmy's party. Excuse me. I live at 25 West 68th Street. It's an old apartment building, but it's got one of the best elevators in New York City. There are mirrors all around. You can see yourself from every angle. There's a soft cushioned bench to sit on if you're too tired to stand. The elevator's operator's name is Henry Bevelheimer. He lets us call him Henry because Bevelheimer's very hard to say. Our apartment's on the 12th floor, but I don't have to tell Henry. He already knows. He knows everybody in the building. He's that smart. He even knows that I'm 9 and in the 4th grade. I showed him Dribble right away. I won him at a birthday party, I said. Henry smiled. Your mother is going to be surprised. Henry was right. My mother was really surprised. Her mouth opened when I said, just look what I won at Jimmy Fargo's birthday party. I held up my tiny green turtle. I've already named him Dribble. Isn't that a great name for a turtle? My mother made a face. I don't like the way he smells, she said. What do you mean? I asked. I put my nose right down close to him. I didn't smell anything but turtle. So, Dribble smells like turtle, I thought. He's supposed to, because that's what he is. And I'm not going to take care of him either, my mother added. Of course you're not, I told her. He's my turtle, and I'm the one who's going to take care of him. You're going to clean his water and clean out his bowl and feed him and all that? She asked. Well, yes, I said, and even more. I'm going to see to it that he's happy. This time my mother made a funny noise, like a groan. I went into my bedroom. I put Dribble on top of my dresser. I tried to pet him and tell him he would be happy living with me. But it isn't easy to pet a turtle. They aren't soft and fluffy and furry, and they don't lick you or anything. Still, I had my very own pet, to say the least. Later, when I sat down to the dinner table, my mother said, I smell turtle, Peter. Go wash your hands. Some people might think that my mother is my biggest problem. She doesn't like turtles, and she's always telling me to scrub my hands. That doesn't mean just run them underwater. Scrub means I'm supposed to use soap and rub my hands together. Then I've got to rinse and dry them. I ought to know by now. I've heard it enough. I'm sure you guys heard it a lot too about washing your hands, right? But my mother isn't my biggest problem. Neither is my father. He spends a lot of time watching commercials on TV. That's because he's in the advertising business. These days, his favorite commercial is the one about Juicy O. He wrote it himself. And the president of the Juicy O company liked it so much, he sent my father a whole crate of Juicy O for our family to drink. It tastes like a combination of oranges, pineapples, grapefruit, pears, and bananas. If you want to know the truth, I'm getting really sick of drinking it. But UCO isn't my biggest problem either. My biggest problem is my brother, Barley Drexel Hatcher. He's 2.5 years old, and everybody calls him Fudge. I feel sorry for him if he's going to grow up with a name like Fudge, but I didn't say a word. It's none of my business. Fudge is always in my way. He messes up everything he sees, and when he gets mad, he throws himself flat on the floor and screams. And he kicks. And he bangs his fists. The only time I really like him is when he's sleeping. He sucks 4 fingers on his left hand and makes a slurping noise. When Fudge saw Dribble and said, "Ooh, see." And I said, "That's my turtle, get it? Mine. You don't touch him." Fudge said, "No touch." And then he laughed like crazy. So do any of you have a little brother or sister who's like about 2-ish or 3-ish, you know what I mean, where they're really younger? You know what I'm talking about, right? Chapter 2, Mr. and Mrs. Juicy O. One night my father came home from the office all excited. He told us Mr. and Mrs. Yarby were coming to New York. He's the president of the Juicy O Company. He lives in Chicago. I wondered if he'd bring my father a crate of Juicy O. If he did, I'd probably be drinking it for the rest of my life. Just thinking about that was enough to make my stomach hurt. My father said he invited Mr. and Mrs. Yarby to stay with us. My mother wanted to know why they couldn't stay at a hotel like most people who come to New York. My father said they could, but he didn't want them to. He thought they'd be more comfortable staying with us. My mother said that was about the silliest thing she ever heard. But she picked up Fudge's bedroom for our guests. She put fancy sheets and a brand new blanket on the hide-a-bed. That's a sofa that opens up into a bed at night. It's in Fudge's room, because that used to be our den. Before he was born, we watched TV in there. And lots of times, Grandma slept over on the hide-a-bed. Now we watch TV right in the living room, and Grandma doesn't sleep over very often. My mother moved Fudge's crib into my room. He's going to get a regular bed when he's 3, my mother says, but there's a lot of reasons why I don't like to sleep in the same room as Fudge. I found that 2 months ago when my bedroom was being painted. I had to sleep in Fudge's room for 3 nights because the paint smell made me cough. For one thing, he talks in his sleep. And if a person didn't know better, a person could get scared. Another thing is that the slurping noises that he makes. It's true that I like to hear when I'm awake, but when I'm trying to fall asleep, I like things very quiet. When I complained about having to sleep with Fudge, my mother just said, "It's just for 2 nights, Peter." "I'll sleep in the living room," I suggested, "on the sofa or even a chair." Thank you. "No," my mother said, "you will sleep in your bedroom in your own bed." There was no point in arguing. Mom was not going to change her mind. She spent the day in the kitchen. She really cooked up a storm. She used so many pots and pans that Fudge didn't have anything left to bang on. And that's one of his favorite pastimes, banging pots and pans together. A person can get an awful headache with listening to that racket. Right after lunch, my mother opened up the dinner table. We don't have a separate dining room. When we have company for dinner, we eat in one end of the living room. When Mom finished setting the table, she put a silver bowl filled with flowers right in the middle. I said, "Hey, Mom, it looks like we're expecting the president or something." "Very funny, Peter," my mother answered. Sometimes my mother laughs like crazy at my jokes. Other times she pretends to not get them. And then there are times when I know she gets them, but she doesn't seem to like them. This is one of those times. So I decided, no more jokes until dinner. I went to Jimmy Fargo's for the afternoon. I came home at 4 o'clock. I found my mother standing over the table mumbling. Fudge was on the floor playing with my father's socks. I'm not sure why he likes socks so much, but if you give him a few pairs, he'll play quietly for an hour. I said, "Hi, Mom, I'm home." "I'm missing 2 flowers," Mother said. I don't know how she noticed that 2 flowers were missing from her silver bowl, because there's at least a dozen of them left. But sure enough, when I checked, I saw 2 stems with nothing on them. "Don't look at me, Mom," I said. "What would I do with 2 measly flowers?" So we both looked at Fudge. "Did you take Mommy's prettiest flowers?" my mother asked him. "No, take," Fudge said. He was chewing on something. "What's in your mouth?" my mother asked. Fudge didn't answer. "Show Mommy." "No show," Fudge said. "Oh, yes." My mother picked him up and forced his mouth open. She fished out a rose petal. "What did you do with Mommy's flowers?" She raised her voice. She was really getting upset. Fudge laughed. "Tell Mommy." "Yum," Fudge said. "Yummy, yummy, yummy." "Oh, no," my mother cried, rushing to the telephone. She called Dr. Cohn. She told him that Fudge ate 2 flowers. Dr. Cohn must have asked what kind, because my mother said, "Roses, I think, but I can't be sure. One might have been a daisy." There was a long pause while my mother listened to whatever Dr. Cohn had to say. And then Mom said, "Thank you, Dr. Cohn," and then she hung up. "No more flowers," she told Fudge. "You understand?" "No more," said Fudge. "No more, no more, no more, no more, no more, no more." Mother gave him a spoonful of peppermint-flavored medicine, the kind I take when I have stomach pains. Then she carried Fudge off to have his bath. Leave it to my brother to eat flowers. I wondered how they tasted. Maybe they're delicious, and I just don't know because I've never eaten one, I thought. I decided to find out. I picked one petal off from a pink rose. I put it in my mouth and chewed it up, but I couldn't do it. It tasted awful. I spit it out in the garbage. Well, at least now I know I'm not missing anything great. Fudge ate his supper in the kitchen before our company arrived. While he was eating, I heard my mother remind him, "Fudge is going to be a good boy tonight. Very good for Daddy's friends." "Good," Fudge said. "Good boy." "That's right," Mother told him. I changed and I scrubbed up while Fudge finished his supper. I was going to eat with the company. Being 9 has its advantages. My mother was all dressed up by the time my father got home with the Arby's. He'd never guessed that Mom spent most of the day in the kitchen. He'd also never guessed that Fudge ate 2 flowers. He was feeling fine. He even smelled nice, like baby powder. Mrs. Yarby picked him up right away. I knew she would. She looked like a grandmother, that type that always makes a big deal out of Fudge. She walked into the living room, cuddling him, and then she sat down on the sofa and bounced Fudge on around her lap. "Isn't he just the cutest boy?" Mrs. Yarby said. "I just love babies." She gave him a big kiss on the top of his head. Mwah! I kept waiting for someone to tell her that Fudge was no baby, but nobody did. My father carried Yarby's suitcase into Fudge's room. When he came back, he introduced me to our company. "This is our older son, Peter," he said to the Yarbys. "I'm 9 and I'm in 4th grade," I told them. "How do you do?" Mr. Yarby said. Mrs. Yarby just gave me a nod. She was still busy with Fudge. "I have a surprise for this dear little boy," she said. "It's in my suitcase. Should I go get it?" "Yes!" Fudge shouted. "Yes! Go get it! Go get it!" Mrs. Yarby laughed as if that was the best joke she ever heard. "Oh, I'll be right back," she told Fudge. She put him down and ran off to find her suitcase. She came back carrying a present tied up with a red ribbon. "Ooh," Fudge cried, opening his eyes wide. "Goody!" And he clapped his hands. Mrs. Yarby helped him unwrap his surprise. It was a wind-up train that made a lot of noise. Every time it bumped into something, it turned around and went the other way. Fudge liked it a lot. He likes anything that's noisy. I said, "That's a nice train." Mrs. Yarby turned to me. "Oh, I have something for you, too. Peter," I said. "My name is Peter," I reminded her. "Yes, well, I'll go get it." Mrs. Yarby left the room again. This time she came back with a flat package. It was wrapped up, too, a red ribbon and all. She handed it to me. Fudge stopped playing with his train long enough to come over to see what I got. I took the paper off very carefully in case my mother would want to save it. and also to show Mrs. Yarby that I am a lot more careful about things than my brother. I'm not sure she noticed. My present turned out to be a big picture dictionary, the kind that I liked when I was about 4 years old. My old one is in Fudge's bookcase right now. I don't know much about big boys, Mrs. Yarby said, so the lady in the store said a nice book would be a good idea. A nice book would have been a good idea, I thought, but a picture dictionary? That's for babies. I had my own dictionary since I was 8, but I knew that I had to be polite and said, oh, thank you very much. It's just what I always wanted. I'm so glad, Mrs. Yarby said. She had let out a long sigh and sat back on the sofa. My father offered the Yarbys a drink. Good idea, Mr. Yarby said. What'll it be? My father said. What'll it be? Mr. Yarby repeated, laughing. Oh, what do you think, Hatcher? I think it'll be Juicy O. That's all we ever drink. Good for your health. Mr. Yarby pounded on his chest. Of course, my father said, and he knew it all along. Juicy O for everyone. My father told my mother. She went to the kitchen to get it. While my father and Mr. Yarby were discussing Juicy O, Fudge disappeared. Just as my mother served everyone a glass of Mr. Yarby's favorite drink, he came back. He was carrying a book, my old, worn-out picture dictionary. It was the same one that the Yarbys just gave me. See? Fudge said, climbing up on Mrs. Yarby's lap. See book! I wanted to vanish. I think my mother and father did too. See book! And he held it up over his head. I can use another one, I explained. I really can't. The old one is falling apart. I tried to laugh. Oh, it's returnable, Mrs. Yarby said. It's silly to keep one if you already have one. She sounded insulted, like it was my fault. She brought me something I already had. Mine, Fudge said, and closed the book and held it tight against his chest. Mine. It's the thought that counts, my mother said. It's so nice of you to think of our boys. And then she turned to Fudge. Put the book away now, Fudgy. Isn't it Fudgy's bedtime? My father hinted. Oh, yes, I think it is, my mother said, scooping him up. Say good night, Fudgy. Good night, Fudgy, my brother said, waving at us. Fudge was supposed to fall asleep before we sat down to dinner. But just in case, my mother put a million little toys in his crib to keep him busy. I don't know who my mother thought she was fooling, because we all know that Fudge can climb out of his crib any old time he wants to. We stayed away until we were in the middle of our roast beef. Then he came in carrying Dribbles the turtle's bowl. He walked right up to Mrs. Yarby. He thought she was his new friend. See? He said, holding Dribble under her nose. See, Dribble! Mrs. Yarby shrieked. Oh, I can't stand reptiles. Get that thing away from me. Fudge looked disappointed, so he showed Dribble to Mr. Yarby. See? He said. Hatcher! Mr. Yarby boomed. Make him get that thing out of here. I wonder why Mr. Yarby called my father Hatcher. Didn't he know his first name was Warren? And I didn't like the way Mr. and Mrs. Yarby both called Dribble a thing. I jumped up. Give him to me, I told Fudge. I took Dribble in his bowl and marched into my room. I inspected the turtle all over. He seemed all right, but I didn't want to make a big scene in front of our company. But I was mad. I mean, really mad. The kid knows he's not supposed to touch my turtle. Peter, my father called, come and finish your dinner. When I got back to the table, I heard Mrs. Yarby say, it must be interesting to have children. We never had any ourselves. But if we did, Mr. Yarby told my father, we'd teach them some manners. I'm a firm believer in old-fashioned good manners. So are we, Howard, my father said in a weak voice. I thought Mr. Yarby had a lot of nerve to hint that we had no manners. Didn't I pretend to like their dumb old picture dictionary? If that isn't good manners, then I don't know what is. My mother excused herself and carried Fudge back to my room. I guess she put him in his crib again. I hoped she told him to keep his hand off of my things. We didn't hear from him again until dessert. Just as my mother was pouring the coffee, he ran in, wearing my rubber gorilla mask from last Halloween. It's a very real looking mask. I guess that's why Mrs. Yarby screamed so loud. If she hadn't made so much noise, my mother probably wouldn't have spilled the coffee all over the floor. My father grabbed Fudge and pulled the gorilla mask off of him. That's not funny, Fudge, he said. Funny, Fudge laughed. Funny. Yes, sir, Hatcher, Mr. Yarby said. Old-fashioned manners. By that time, I'm sure my father was sorry the Yarbys weren't staying in a hotel. I finally got to bed at 10. Fudge was in his crib, slipping away. I thought I'd never fall asleep, but I guess I did. Once I woke up when Fudge started babbling. He said, Boomba mama mama, whatever that means. I didn't even get scared. I whispered, shut up. And he did. Early the next morning, I felt something funny in my arm. At first, I didn't wake up. I just felt this little tickle. I thought it was part of my dream. But then I had the feeling that somebody was staring at me. So I opened my eyes. Fudge was standing over me, and Dribble was crawling around on my arm. I guess Fudge couldn't tell that I was ready to kill him because he bent down and kissed me. That's what he does when my mother's angry at him. He thinks nobody can resist him when he makes himself so lovable. And a lot of times it works with my mother, but not with me. I jumped up, put Dribble back into his bowl, and I smacked Fudge on his backside. Hard. He hollered. My father came running into the room, and he was still in his pajamas. He was, what's going on here? I pointed at Fudge, and he pointed at me. My father picked up my brother and carried him off. Go back to sleep, Peter, he said. It's only 6 o'clock in the morning. I fell asleep for another hour, and then woke up to an awful noise. It was Fudge playing with his new train. It woke everybody up, including the Yarbys. But this time, nobody could blame. There was nobody they could blame. They were the ones who gave Fudge the train in the first place. Breakfast was a very quiet affair. Nobody had much to say. Mr. Yarby drank 2 glasses of Juicio. Then he told my father that he and Mrs. Yarby had their suitcases packed. They were leaving for a hotel as soon as breakfast was over. My father said he understood. That the apartment was too small for so many people. My mother didn't say anything. When Mr. Yarby went into Fudge's bathroom, he picked up his suitcase. His voice boomed, Hatcher! My father ran towards the bedroom. My mother and Mrs. Yarby followed him. Then I followed them. When we got there, we saw Fudge sitting on the Yarby suitcase. He had decorated it with about 100 green stamps, the kind that my mother gets in the supermarket. See? Fudge said, pretty. He laughed. Nobody else did. Then he licked the last green stamp and stuck it right in the middle of the suitcase. All gone, Fudge sang, holding up his hands. It took my mother half an hour to peel off her trading stamps and clean up the Yarby's suitcase. The next week, my father came home from the office and collected all the cans of Juicio in our house. He dumped them in the garbage. My mother felt bad that my father had lost such an important account. But my father told her not to worry. Juicio wasn't selling very well in the stores. Nobody seemed to like the combination of oranges, grapefruits, pineapples, pears, and bananas. You know, Dad, I said, I only drank Juicio to be polite. I really hated it. You know something, Peter? My father said. I thought it was pretty bad myself. All right, we're going to stop there because that's the end of chapter 2. And, oh, you have to excuse me. Okay, and what we have here for our song is we're going to go back to Schoolhouse Rock because I just love Schoolhouse Rock, definitely. We're going to do Unpack Your Adjectives. I don't think we've done that one yet.
As your body grows big.
Whoop, hold on, I got to rewind it. Come here. Okay, we're talking about adjectives. Adjectives are describing words like tall or hairy, And then they can also be modified, like long, longer, longest. And so let's see a little bit about what we can learn about adjectives.
As your body grows bigger, your mind must power. It's great to learn, cause knowledge is power. It's Schoolhouse Rocky, the tip of the block of your favorite schoolhouse rock. To begin our show, unpack your adjectives. Got home from camping last spring. Saw people, places, and things.
Those are nouns.
We barely had arrived. Friends asked us to describe the people, places, and every last thing. So we unpacked our adjectives. I unpacked frustrating first. Reached in and found the word worst. Then I picked soggy and next I picked froggy and then I was ready to tell them my tale. 'Cause I'd unpacked my adjectives. Adjectives are words you use to really describe things. Handy words to carry around. Days are sunny or they're rainy. Boys are dumb or else they're brainy. Adjectives can show you which way. Adjectives are often used to help us compare things. To say how thin, how fat, how short, how tall. Girls who are tall get taller. Boys who are small get smaller. Till one is the tallest and another's the smallest of all. We hiked along without care. Then we ran into a bear. He was a hairy bear. He was a scary bear. We beat a hasty retreat from his lair. And described him with adjectives. Boy, that was one big ugly bear.
One big ugly.
You can even make adjectives out of the other parts of speech, like verbs or nouns. All you have to do is tack on an ending, like acorn, ish, or eric. For example, this boy can grow up to be a huge man, but still have a boyish face. Boy is a noun, but the ending ish makes it an adjective, boyish. That describes the huge man's face. Get it? Next time you go on a trip, remember this little tip. The minute you get back, they'll ask you this and that. You can describe people, places, and things. Simply unpack your adjectives. You can do it with adjectives. Tell about it with adjectives. You can shout it with adjectives.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed that. Whoa, hold on a second. I'm trying to turn this off, but it's not working. Anyway, you have a wonderful, wonderful day. You have a wonderful day, and we will see you tomorrow on Tuesday. Thursday, we will not have our story time. I have a meeting at the same time. So remember, we will be continuing with Judy Bloom, Tales of Fourth Grade Nothing, but we will not be doing it Thursday. We will do it Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. Have a wonderful day. Go forth, go make a difference. Take care, guys.